so probably at the way far other end of the scale, I'm talking about, yeah, little mini Ember apps in legacy websites. And I say legacy sort of only half jokingly. I don't necessarily mean something that's just 6 months old. I mean, yeah, incompatible versions of jQuery and stuff like that. So this is something that I use right now in a project that I'm currently working on. I actually have a couple small Ember apps that are active at the same time in a website that uses a crazy old version of jQuery. So I just wanted to talk about that. So it's pretty easy to set this up if you just want to get going with something simple. And it's directly from the guides. You just make an element, define your element, set which element you want the Ember app to sort of take over. And an important point is to turn the location off. This does mean that you're not routable. Your states of your applications are not routable. And I think it might be possible to actually use the location, but it really depends on if another library or something else in your site is using the hash area of the site. I haven't tried it. I just turned it off and sort of didn't want to deal with it, and I didn't actually need it, so that was fine. So one thing I do like to do, even though I think one of the apps I have is just one route, I don't like to use the index route. I like to just have a default route. It makes it more semantic, so I can say, yeah, this is my chat messages route or whatever, something meaningful route, and I just, by default transition to it. So I also like this style as well because I can add another route if I need to easily. We all know requirements change. Sometimes you need to add new functionality. So that's sort of a style I like to do, and I recommend that. So I mentioned my crazy jQuery. So it was just an outdated version of jQuery. Obviously I don't want to run two versions of jQuery on the same site, but in this case I sort of had to if I wanted to use Ember. And I saw the benefits of using Ember as opposed to sort of writing stuff in jQuery or spaghetti jQuery. So I did some playing around, and I was thrown off by this a little bit, but in the end it was pretty simple. So this actually is just a function to set up your Ajax. It's familiar to Django people, but the important bit here is that you need to use the Ember version of jQuery. You can't just use the jQuery by itself, or else you'll pick up the wrong version. And Ember's quite nice because they tell you, in the debug when you're starting the app, it tells you which version it picks up. It'll bomb if it doesn't find a jQuery you can use. So.
Are you using two jQueries at the same time, or?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So there's like a jQuery 1.7, which is pretty old, for this old version of Bootstrap, which is on the site. And I just, basically, the project I'm on, the client didn't want to pay for the update, right? They're like, make us this feature. We're not really interested in, it's already working. So, I guess I could have spent some time under the...
You can use shimming, right? You can just shim default behavior onto
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's another thing I could have done. I mean, my thought was that I wanted to replace the jQuery version anyway, and I actually thought it was going to happen earlier. I thought it was just a stepping stone, and it turned out to be a pretty long stepping stone. So it's still like in my plan is to, replace that bits of the project, and I think if I can predict the future, which is really hard when you're getting requirements from people, but I think they're going to throw out that section of the site that uses the old version of jQuery. So that's sort of why I don't want to put energy into it, right? And probably also why they don't want to pay me to do any work on it. So it's basically working, and I thought, it's a little crazy, but it works. I basically have no problems with it. Sorry?
I was used to using 3 versions.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so, but...
You would.
Another one you require, and then I'm like, okay, I'll just expose it to another global. Hey, there it is.
Yeah, I was surprised how easy it worked once I figured out the trick, right? Okay, so also if you're using these on legacy sites, truly like old cruddy code, you're gonna have crazy kludges to get your application up and running. So this is like something I needed to do because the functionality is in a tab structure, tab panes, which are all in the DOM and only visible when a user clicks on the tab. So of course I need to activate my app or the functionality of my app. I need to go to my route when a user clicks on the tab element. So yeah, this is, I just cut and pasted this from code that I use, and yeah, it works, basically it works fine. I also had to do the opposite, so when the user clicks on another tab that's not my tab, I need to deactivate the app. In this case, this was for a chat app, so I needed to transition to another state, like a standby state, as opposed to a active and in the chat state. So yeah, I mean, I did it. It took a bit of working out, but in the end, yeah, it was okay. The good thing about this is that the only problems that I really had were, booting up the app, like this kind of thing. Besides everything else, yeah, it's Ember is just Ember. Once your app is up and running, I have two apps, like I said, sort of in two tab panes that are active. Yeah, both in the app at the same time. One uses Ember data, one doesn't, because I needed some feature that wasn't available in the adapter in the Django adapter at the time. So I probably will move them both to Ember data, and my plan is to eventually merge the two functionalities into sort of one app instead of having these multiple apps doing different things. But right now it works, and there's no real reason for me to do that until I get updated requirements from the clients. So that was sort of my that's my little show and tell session. The one question I guess I have for you guys is, so right now I'm not using this, I'm just using, directly adding the libraries in, and I want to switch to Ember CLI somehow. And Martin and I were talking about, how would you actually go about doing that? And I was wondering if anybody has ideas. Because like at the end, Ember CLI will spit out, can Ember CLI spit out just a JavaScript for you to include in a page?
Yeah, we're actually, we have a Ruby project that picks out the JavaScript file and just includes its own jQuery and everything, and then just includes the JavaScript file into the Ruby project, and then runs it.
And how do you do that?
Well, we'll first build it and then pick out the vendor.js and the application.js files from the dist folder, and then maybe some other few files that are application specific, and then mount it into our Rails app.
Okay.
Basically.
Do you use Ember CLI Rails or?
No, we're just using Ember CLI Rails as Git submodules.
Okay.
And then we have a build script that builds our apps, and then in the same script we copy and paste the files to a vendor folder of the Rails app.
Okay. Is it a full single page app?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so but there shouldn't be any difference if I just say, okay, just the app will not only be on this element of the page.
Yeah,
right?
we have our custom index.html for the app, so in Rails. It's a Rails template or Ruby template, the index.html.
Okay, yeah, but is there other like sort of Ruby on Rails specific stuff in the template? Or is it just one div?
Yeah, we have our own GUI around it a little bit, which checks for if the user is logged in and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, so that's probably similar to my case, because I'm with the Django backend, except that I have way more stuff on the Django page, right? I'm using mostly Django.
It's like in the index that, or we have like a route that shows the one of the applications, and in that route the application is loaded. And then
Okay, so you also have multiple applications?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Do you need to build that because you're using the JavaScript file that comes out of the Broccoli build? Then?
Yeah.
So you have to build it every time you want to do this.
Every time we deploy, we have to build it.
So how do you develop this? I mean, I imagine that if you're looking at your screen and you want to make a minor change to the JavaScript file,
We develop and test without the Rails application.
Okay. So
We
you
have
just
a
check-
separate API and we just use the staging API. We can manage that via a configuration script. And then
So
well,
then
the whole GUI around
you
it
just
is-
test
is
the
sep-
app
Yeah,
directly through the Broccoli
Yeah.
file server.
yeah. We just boot up the Ember server on Ember CLI and
Yeah,
we
okay.
run it and it points to the staging API.
So I guess in your case you might want to be able to, this should be more than theoretically possible to get the URL of the JavaScript file that is used in the HTML that Broccoli is outputting, so that you don't have to run build every time you want to test the Ember app inside your main app,
Okay, yeah.
right? Because the Broccoli server will update the JS for you, and then you don't have to run a build script every time,
Yeah.
which can be slow.
Yeah.
Because that problem at some point when I wanted to submit a patch to the Ember.js guys back in the day when they hadn't documented how you would go about this kind of development. And I would, every time I made a change to Ember, I would have to build it to a version of Ember, which took, I don't know, 10 seconds. And at some point, just
Well,
switching with people.
We actually have two tasks. One that clears all the node modules and everything and does a really clean build, and one that does a fast build. And fast build is like 1 second, and we can plug it into a file watcher in Rails. So if you really want to work in Rails and at the same time, we can do that with like 2-3 second builds.
That would be awesome.
But you'll have to deploy your Rails app to get your JavaScript changes live, or?
No, we can local test the whole app.
Yeah, okay, but once you made an Ember change, a JavaScript change.
Submodules.
Yeah, okay.
So they're just in submodules, and then you can locally build and test and everything of the whole app.
I have some very nasty regexpress to load in my JavaScript instead of overriding my Rails, and some very nasty solutions for that. So I'm quite curious how you fixed some of the stuff. Because
Okay.
Ember CLI Rails, there's some weird stuff in there with assets
we don't
loading.
use that. We just have our Ember CLI projects in Git repos, and we have it as submodules, and then we have a small script that builds them and copy pastes the file.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
Alright.
Alright, yeah, if there's any other questions, then we can take a break. I think some snacks have arrived, and then, yeah, in 20 minutes or so, we'll start with Martin's talk.
Sure.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks.